Good afternoon. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Economic Development and Regulatory Services Committee for today, which is January 21st. I've been joined by Council Members Cano, Fletcher, and Ellison, which is a quorum of the committee. We have a lengthy consent agenda today, including the liquor license renewals, gambling license approvals, gambling license renewals, as well as a rental license reinstatement, a contract for emergency board-up services, the simple deed redevelopment grant applications, the Great Streets Program area eligible areas, and an extension on a development contract with regard to the Alden Smith House, as well as setting the public hearing for the appointment of Kim Keller. With that, I'm going to have to postpone item 4, which is Quincy Hall. So we'll first start with the motion to postpone item 4. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That item is approved. Then I'll move the consent agenda, items 1 through 3 and 5 through 10. Are there any questions or comments on the consent agenda? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Those items are approved. We'll then move to item number 11, which is sidewalk cafe, cart, and mobile food license restrictions. And we'll ask staff if they want to make a presentation, quick comments on this. If not, I can do it myself. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair Goodman, council members. My name is Enrique Velasquez, and I'm the manager of licensing and consumer services. The purpose of this specific action is so that we can move forward with moving sidewalk cafes off of the sidewalk at a point in time that is appropriate when the city of Minneapolis Public Works need to utilize that space for utility upgrades. Essentially, that's the point of this specific reporting and the action just for that endeavor. This action could have taken place earlier, but because of the nature of the utility work, the work was in the streetscape, not on the sidewalkscape, so there was no need to make that sort of recommendation.
Okay, are there any questions for Mr. Velasquez? Councilmember Fletcher.
Thank you, Chair Goodman. Can't we always do that? Like if there's some sort of construction or some sort of obstruction that makes the sidewalk more narrow, is this a right that we don't normally have?
Chair Goodman, Councilmember Fletcher, thank you for the question. Typically, we do not. We like to at least telegraph that in advance so that our licensees have the opportunity to plan themselves accordingly. Given that it's only a 1 week notice, they're not really able to plan a whole lot in advance. But yes, just by more nature of practice, we try to telegraph what's going to happen.
So this is really just a way of telling everybody that for the next year or two, while we're doing this big construction project, there's likely to be frequent disruptions?
Likely to be a disruption, yes, sir. And the disruption for that specific sidewalk licensee is a one-time disruption. So while the neighbors are going to be disrupted at some point sequentially, that specific business will only be disrupted once.
And I have one more, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
So I just want to make sure. So the only reason that we would be telling someone they couldn't be out with their sidewalk cafe or food cart would be if there was a specific construction related condition. We're not just deciding that it makes us feel safer or like things are more convenient to restrict sidewalk activity.
Chair Goodman, Councilmember Fletcher. Yes, that's correct. We would make that move specifically for construction purposes, not because of livability or other types of activities like that.
Okay, thanks.
Certainly.
So along the lines of what Councilmember Fletcher's saying, I just kind of don't believe it. Because, I mean, there are businesses listed on this list that aren't even in the project area that we're saying that we're going to limit their sidewalk cafe. And we can't tell them when it's going to be, how long it's going to be. We're just saying, hey, sometime in the next season, we're going to shut down your sidewalk cafe. We can't tell you when, we can't tell you how long, or what really the reason exactly is. So as a result of that, I'm bringing forward an amendment that will waive the fee for 2020 for the businesses that are listed below. Because I don't think it's fair to ask people to pay a fee and then expect to have their sidewalk cafe, and then at any time with 7 days' notice, you'll have to move it. We can't tell you how long it's going to be. We can't tell you really exactly what the reason is. And my concern is that with construction, especially with the private contractors, they're not in any frickin' hurry to like move and make it faster. So it's really a business interruption, and I don't think it's fair for them to pay a fee, as low as it might be. And I understand the fees in some cases are as low as $235. It's more an acknowledgement that we're going to come in and do what we want when we want. You can't do anything about it. Therefore, we're going to waive your fee for this year. So I have an amendment. It's in front of everybody today. And we'll see if there's any other comments or questions. I will note that this isn't a regular business interruption. This is 4 years of business interruption. We're already almost 2 years into it as well. And so now we're talking this year and then maybe another after that. I'm just asking to waive the fee for next year when they do believe that the concentration of utility work in the sidewalks will be its greatest. So I guess, seeing no further questions, I'll move approval of the staff recommendation along with my amendment that's in front of you. Comments or questions on that? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved, and we're on to our last item, which is a number of items related to the Upper Harbor Terminal project.
Councilmember Goodman, members of the committee, my name is Eric Hansen. I'm the Director of Economic Policy and Development. Before you is 3 related elements for the Upper Harbor Terminal, and I'll go over them briefly and then answer questions that you might have. The first one is an extension of the exclusive development rights with United Properties out to October 31st of 2020. This extension allows for the process to be concluded with the coordinated plan. As you recall, in March of last year, you told us to come back with a draft plan. By March of this year, we will have that draft plan completed by the end of March, but we want to have additional community engagement around that plan so that there gives us some time and extension through the summer to do the engagement and then come to you with development term sheets by the end of October. I'll come back to the second one. The third part of this is to give the Minneapolis Park Board kind of a universal access to the site. As you know, there are partners in the development of this site, and they need to get on from time to time with consultants and others while they're doing their planning, and this gives them that opportunity to do that without having to come to us every 30 days for it. And then the second component of this report is related to a staff direction, and then a component of the approval of the concept plan. The approval of the concept plan was to report back to the City Council on Thor. As you know, Thor is a named development partner in the exclusive development rights. At the time of the approval of the concept plan, Thor was going through a bankruptcy reorganization. We are reporting back to the Council that the coordinated plan will have more details on who will be the developers. And Thor right now has been assumed by an entity called Norman Global Enterprises. That is a consultant, not a named development partner to the development team. We will be coming forward in the coordinated plan with what to do about developers. We're working on community ownership models, some lease back options, so a number of options. So there's likely to be different developers that would come forward. And so we're reporting that we'll just keep it as is and then come back with the coordinated plan. And then we're reporting on a staff direction around the warehouse. You asked us to do a cost-benefit analysis for the existing warehouse. As you know, the plan calls for that to be removed so that we could have a park and a parkway in that location. We would have in the development of the coordinated plan alternative uses or alternative buildings where we could have the uses that are contemplated in there around the community hub. When we started that cost-benefit analysis, we did it around how much it would cost just to replace the building or bring it up to code. In that initial engineering report, it identified some fire and building code issues, which kind of directed our work around mitigating and removing those fire code issues. We brought in the fire inspector, the building inspector. Down the path, we have fixed and remedied the city's components of those fire code issues, mainly some exit lighting and a sprinkler system. And then we have some tenants. 5 customers of River Services Incorporated, which is our property manager, occupy the building, including in addition to River Services. In that building, 3 of those tenants are cold storage, which is the intent of the building. They store, like, in one case it's some boats, in another case it's some floats, and in other cases, in the third case, it's electrical supplies for a contractor. 2 of the tenants have made improvements in the building. One was thermospray. They constructed some improvements that did not meet the building nor the fire code. Their user agreement expired at the end of December. That was not renewed, and they are moving out. There's potential for us to have to do some eviction actions to get their equipment out. Otherwise, we're processing through that. And then the 5th user and customer is Mississippi Mushrooms, which grows mushrooms in the facility. And that's a very complicated situation because Mississippi Mushrooms did not pull appropriate building permits and constructed their improvements with a flammable material. So they violated violations of both the building and the fire code. We're working with Mississippi Mushrooms to remedy the situation. The challenge is because of its use, it is not an allowable use as an urban farm. We cannot put it into that building based on the zoning code. And so it's impossible for them to pull a building permit unless we move to rezone the property, which is not consistent with 2040. So we're in a very precarious position with that customer. We've been working with Mississippi Mushrooms. We've given them the notice of 30 days. They've responded with a request for some additional time. Our staff has been working with them to try and first protect life safety and the issues that are in the building, and then 2, to see if we can do what we can do to support the business as it transitions out of the building. We're not certain what that course of action is, but we have our small business team, our site selection person, and a project manager working with the business to try and find options for them as they find a new spot in the city. And with that, I'll take any questions you might have.
Are there questions for staff on the report? Councilmember Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to first state my support as the council member for the Upper Harbor Terminal area, my support for these actions here today. I also just want to make sure that I express my gratitude to the city staff who have worked incredibly hard on this project thus far to get us to this point. There has been a very high standard set by Councilmember Ellison and I through the concept plan around what community engagement should look like, around what kind of community benefits we want to see, community ownership, how does this project in general relate to the North Side community. And city staff have really risen to this challenge in a way that I'm tremendously grateful for. So I want to be sure to name that because I am very heavily involved in this work from day to day. And I have a wonderful partner in Mr. Hansen here in really working through those details. I will share that I am actually the one who advocated for the extension through October because it's really important that we have the technical expertise of the plan, about those details around infrastructure and what kind of buildings go where, and those components of it. But we also have to have a deep level of engagement. That is something that we've committed to, and that takes time. So there is intentionality in this extension. It is not just an extension for extension's sake. We have a clear timeline and plan for how community engagement will roll out during that time, following the presentation in March with the draft plan, which also will include community benefits, and beginning the conversation around community ownership, which, by the way, is incredibly complicated. We've been doing a ton of research, digging into the work. We've had a lot of really productive conversations with the Upper Harbor Terminal Collaborative Planning Committee, which are made up of really phenomenal, hardworking Northsiders in particular. And so we're making good progress, and these are pretty simple actions before us today, but I wanted to make sure to highlight overall the very complex work and the stellar quality of the work that has been done by city staff, as well as along with community members. Thank you.
Councilmember Ellison.
Just wanted to make a few comments as well. I know that myself and Councilmember Cunningham have been in contact with Mississippi Mushrooms throughout the various months, and I just kind of wanted to thank staff for looking at the building and identifying that there was a life safety issue here. But I also want to empathize with Mississippi Mushrooms, knowing that this isn't necessarily somebody who's a bad actor or a bad tenant, but it sounds like kind of at some point in the past he was set up to fail because of the condition of the building and the uses that he was engaging in, and I'm also happy that staff is engaging with him and trying to figure out how to problem solve, not to let him stay in the building when there are life safety issues and when there are and when there's a threat of a fire, especially now when it's extremely cold and that kind of thing can happen a little more easily. But I'm thankful that staff is trying to problem solve and figure out how can we make sure that this business owner is able to operate. I'd love to be able to keep him in North Minneapolis, and just wanted to illustrate that that myself and Councilmember Cunningham are also on board when it comes to being engaged in that problem solving and trying to see how we can get him in a situation where he's in compliance and where there's not risk of fire or damage or of a human safety concern. So just wanted to articulate that, and thank you all for all the work you're doing with that business owner.
Further comments or questions? Seeing none, I didn't hear a motion to approve, so I'll make a motion to approve the staff recommendation on item number 12. Seeing no further comments, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That is approved. Seeing no further business before us, we are adjourned.